Social media is a strange place. To the outside world, it looks like a window into someone's life, a clear picture of their reality. But it's really more like a mask, isn't it? A mask that you can shape however you like, hiding what you don't want others to see. That's what I was good at, shaping my life online, showing the world what I wanted it to see. To be honest, I liked it better that way. Real-life conversations, real-life people, they could be exhausting. Online, though, I had control. I could choose what to show, what to say, when to say it. I had carefully built this world that was mine, where I could be the best version of myself, or at least the version I wanted people to see. I had a decent following, not massive, but enough to keep me going, enough to make me feel like what I said mattered to someone out there. My followers saw my travels, my work, my thoughts on the world, little pieces of me that I'd let slip out like breadcrumbs. My posts were thoughtful, polished, every caption crafted to sound just right, every photo edited just enough to look real, but better. It wasn't exactly who I was, but it was who I wanted to be. And as long as I had control, as long as it was my hand on the keyboard, I could maintain that. Then one day, I noticed something odd. It was a small thing, barely even a blip on my radar. I'd posted a picture, nothing special, just a coffee shop shot, one of those relaxed, warm photos that makes people think you're living your best life. I remembered the caption exactly. Perfect spot to start the day, let's make it a good one. It was bright, cheerful, positive. That was the vibe I was going for, and I knew I'd nailed it. But when I checked back on the post later, the caption was different. Just a single word, but it changed everything. Instead of let's make it a good one, it now said, let's make it another one. That small word, another, had twisted the whole tone. Suddenly the post didn't sound cheerful. It sounded tired, resigned, like a sigh instead of a smile. I stared at the screen, feeling that first prickle of unease. Had I typed it wrong? I was so sure of what I'd written, but mistakes happen, right? Maybe I'd been distracted. Maybe my mind had slipped, just for a second. I shook it off, edited the post back to its original form, and forgot about it. Just a small, silly mistake. Nothing more. Or so I thought. But it didn't stop there. A few days later, I noticed it again. This time, it was on a different post, a memory from last year's vacation. I'd captioned it with something light and simple. Just a quick note about missing the beach, the sun, that sort of thing. But when I went back to it, there it was, altered. The words, I miss this place, had become, I wish I could go back. It was such a small change, but it twisted the whole meaning, made it sound like I was longing for something I'd lost. Like I was sad. And the thing was, it wasn't true. I didn't feel that way. At least, I didn't think I did. Now, I was starting to feel unsettled. I knew I hadn't typed it that way. I was meticulous about my posts, especially when it came to my captions. I took screenshots before posting, just to have proof that what I'd written was exactly what I meant. And I remembered that caption so clearly. I miss this place. I was sure of it, so how had it changed? I fixed it, again, telling myself it was a glitch or maybe some weird issue with the app. These things happen. Technology isn't perfect, but there was a gnawing feeling in the back of my mind that I couldn't shake. A tiny voice whispering that something was wrong. And then, just a few days later, it happened again. This time, it wasn't a word or a phrase. It was an entire tone, twisted into something dark. I'd posted a quote, one of those motivational lines about persistence, about pushing through challenges. It was a quote that always lifted my spirits, one that reminded me of why I worked so hard. But when I went back to it, the words had changed. The message was the same, technically, but the way it was phrased was wrong. Instead of sounding uplifting, it sounded bitter, almost sarcastic. The words that had once given me strength now felt like a burden. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I hadn't written it that way. I could feel the first stirrings of fear, cold and creeping, as I stared at the screen. This wasn't just a glitch. This was something else, something intentional. Someone was changing my words, twisting my posts into messages I didn't recognize, and I had no idea who or how. It started happening more frequently. Every few days, I'd post something, and by the next time I looked, it would be different. Sometimes it was subtle, just a word or two that shifted the tone. Other times, it was like someone had crawled into my head, taken my thoughts, and made them darker. as if they were peeling away the polished image I'd built and exposing something raw, something ugly. One day I posted about a small victory at work, just a little update to keep my followers in the loop. I'd captioned it with something simple, positive, a little celebration of the progress I'd made. But when I checked it later, the caption had changed, just slightly, but enough. Instead of sounding proud, it sounded almost defeated, like I was tired of even trying. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at the screen, feeling that gnawing fear growing stronger, sharper. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a glitch. Someone, somehow, was changing my posts, turning my words against me. And I didn't know why. That night, after fixing the post again, I closed the app, determined to let it go. But then, a notification appeared. It wasn't from any app I recognized, no username attached, just a single message that sent a chill down my spine. You didn't need to change that. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling that strange, creeping dread settle over me. There was no sender, no way to reply, just those words hanging in the air like a whisper, like a warning. Someone was watching, someone knew. I felt a wave of nausea, a tightness in my chest as I tried to make sense of it. Who could have sent this? How did they know I'd changed the post? I was alone in my room, no one around, no one who could have seen, and yet, they knew. For the first time, I felt truly afraid. I started checking my account obsessively, scrolling through every post, looking for any sign of change, any hint that someone had been there. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything else. All I could think about was my account, my posts, my words, and who might be changing them. I pulled away from friends, family, anyone who might ask questions. I didn't want them to know what was happening, didn't want them to think I was losing my mind. Because truthfully, I was starting to wonder if I was. Maybe I'd made it all up, maybe it was all in my head. But every time I went back, there it was, a new post. Changed, twisted, staring back at me like a mirror I didn't recognize. And then the whispers started. It was faint at first, barely noticeable, just a soft, distant sound that seemed to echo in the background as I read my posts. I'd be staring at the screen, rereading a caption, and I'd hear it. A faint, almost inaudible whisper, like someone reading along with me. It was so quiet, so subtle, that I wasn't sure it was real. But each time it grew louder, clearer, until I couldn't ignore it. I tried using voice memos to record myself, to prove that I wasn't imagining it. But every time I played them back, there was something wrong. The audio would glitch, skip, as if something or someone was interfering. I'd hear my own voice, broken up, distorted, fragments of words I didn't remember saying, sentences I hadn't spoken. The isolation deepened. I couldn't trust my own voice, couldn't trust my own words. Every post, every caption, every thought felt tainted, like it wasn't mine anymore. I stopped posting altogether, hoping that maybe, if I stayed silent, it would stop. But the silence didn't help. If anything, it made it worse. Because now I could feel them watching, waiting, that presence lurking just beyond the screen, just out of reach. I was trapped, alone, with no way out. And I knew, deep down, that they weren't done with me. Not yet. There's a point where fear starts to feel like a part of you. It settles into your skin, into your bones, until you forget what life was like without it. I'd reached that point. Fear was my new reality, and every time I logged into my account, I felt it sharpen, deepen, like a knife twisting slowly, painfully. My posts were no longer mine. They were twisted messages, haunting echoes of things I'd buried, memories I'd locked away. It started with a picture. Just an ordinary sunset, nothing special. I'd captioned it, "Another beautiful day." But when I looked at it again, it wasn't what I'd written. The words had changed, and now they read, "Another day wasted." It sounds small, but it hit me like a punch to the gut, like someone had reached inside me and twisted my own thoughts. That phrase, that exact phrase, was something I'd thought to myself once, long ago, during a rough patch I hadn't spoken of, not to anyone. It was private, a thought I'd hidden deep down. And now it was staring back at me, mocking me. I tried to stay calm, to tell myself it was a coincidence, but then it happened again. The next post was a photo of an old memory, a moment I'd shared with friends years ago. I'd captioned it with something simple, something lighthearted, but when I checked back, it was different. The new caption hinted at guilt, regret, as if I'd betrayed someone. It didn't make sense. I'd never written those words. But somehow they were there, exposing feelings I didn't even know I had. It was like my own mind was turning against me, digging up parts of me I'd wanted to forget. I tried to delete it, to erase it from my feed, but no matter how many times I hit delete, it reappeared, each time with new details, each time more personal, more invasive. I was losing control, and every time I logged in, I felt a little more of myself slip away. It didn't take long before I started seeing things. Little shadows, faint shapes just at the edge of my screen. It would happen when I was staring at my phone, reading the twisted words someone else had put there. For a split second, I'd catch a glimpse of a face, blurry, almost transparent, watching me from the reflection in my screen. But when I'd look closer, it would be gone, leaving me staring at my own face, hollow and afraid. It wasn't just my screen. I started hearing things too. It would start as a soft murmur, barely a sound, like someone reading over my shoulder. As I scrolled through my posts, I'd hear a faint whisper, echoing my words, repeating them back to me in a voice that wasn't quite mine. It was like someone else was there with me, inside my head, pulling my secrets out and turning them against me. I knew I couldn't handle this alone, that I needed help. So I reached out to a tech expert, hoping they'd find some logical explanation, maybe a hacker, maybe malware. Something. Anything. But after hours of combing through my devices, they looked at me puzzled and told me there was nothing. No breach, no compromised account. To them, it was as if I was the only one with access, as if I was the one making the changes. They suggested I change my passwords, secure my accounts, but what good were passwords when the intruder was something else? Something that wasn't bound by accounts or security. I felt trapped, helpless, like a bug pinned to a board, struggling but unable to escape. I started noticing things in my home, small details that were off. Items moved, placed in ways I never left them. My phone would have scratches I didn't remember, or a note would appear, tucked under my keyboard or on my desk. The notes were always the same, a simple message scrawled in my own handwriting, words I would never write. I see you. Each time I saw those words, my skin prickled, my hands shook. It felt like a taunt, like someone was toying with me, watching me unravel. I checked the locks, secured my windows, double-checked everything before going to bed. But no matter what I did, the notes would appear, as if someone had walked right through my walls, right into my life, and left a piece of themselves behind. At night, my apartment felt different, darker, like the air was thicker, pressing down on me, wrapping around me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was never alone, that someone was always there, just out of sight, just out of reach. And it wasn't just a feeling, it was real. I could feel it, creeping closer, slipping into the cracks, taking over. There's a moment where fear shifts into something else, something darker, something that eats away at you from the inside. I started to wonder if maybe I was the one causing all of this. Maybe I'd been editing my posts without remembering. Maybe I'd been writing those notes, leaving them for myself in some twisted subconscious act of self-sabotage. I felt myself spiraling, slipping into a darkness I couldn't pull myself out of. Every time I looked into a mirror or caught my reflection in a window, I'd see something. A shadow, a hint of someone else, watching me from the other side. Sometimes I'd see my own face, but it wasn't right. It was twisted, warped, with a smile that didn't belong to me. Eyes that were too wide, too knowing, looking back at me with a mixture of pity and malice. I'd blink and it would be gone, leaving me staring at my own reflection, terrified, unsure if I'd imagined it or if it had really been there waiting for me, taunting me. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. My own face, my own thoughts, they felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else, like I was just a passenger, watching from a distance as someone else took control. I reached a breaking point. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't stand the sight of my own words twisted, the sound of whispers echoing in my mind. So I did the only thing I could think of. I deleted everything. My accounts, my posts, my entire online presence. I wiped my devices, scrubbed them clean, desperate to erase every trace of myself from the digital world. But it didn't work. The posts kept appearing. Even with no account, no device linked to me, new posts would show up, each one more personal, each one cutting deeper, exposing thoughts and memories I hadn't even known were there. It was like I was watching someone else's life, someone else's secrets, but they were mine. Pieces of me I couldn't recognize, pieces I'd buried long ago. I turned off every device, shut them all down, desperate to escape, but the posts kept coming. I'd hear my phone buzz, see a message light up, even though it was off. I'd open my messages and see texts from strangers, messages from people I didn't know, each one saying the same thing. I know who you are. The posts weren't just online anymore. They were in my life, in my home. I'd find them written on scraps of paper, scrawled across my notes, even on the walls. Words that twisted and turned, spelling out secrets, fears I didn't recognize, thoughts that felt foreign, like they were coming from somewhere else. My mind was breaking, splitting, each piece turning against me, each thought feeling like a stranger. I was losing myself, piece by piece, word by word, until there was nothing left, nothing I could call my own. I started seeing things, flashes of movement, glimpses of a shadow that would disappear the moment I looked. It was always there, always just out of reach, like a part of me I couldn't touch, couldn't control. I wanted to scream, wanted to claw the thoughts out of my mind, to rip away the words that weren't mine, but no matter what I did, they were there, always there, waiting, watching, taking over. I was trapped, alone, and no one could save me. Not from this. Not from myself. There's a line between fear and madness, a thin, brittle line that can snap without you even knowing. I had crossed that line. I wasn't just afraid anymore. I was hollow, drained, haunted by things I couldn't understand. My life, my mind, my own thoughts, they weren't mine anymore. They belonged to someone else. Something else. And I couldn't fight it. Couldn't escape it. Every time I tried to ignore it, the posts would reappear, each one more disturbing, each one more personal, more twisted. They knew everything. My thoughts, my fears, memories I'd long forgotten, things I'd never spoken out loud, my deepest regrets, my darkest secrets, things I'd hidden from the world, from myself. And now, they were all laid bare, exposed for everyone to see. I couldn't hide anymore. I couldn't run, so I did the only thing I could think of. I confronted it. One night, I stared into my phone screen, determined to face whatever was lurking in the darkness. The screen was blank, but I could feel something there, something waiting, watching me. I took a deep breath, looked into my own reflection and spoke. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath, barely more than a plea. For a long, agonizing moment, there was nothing. Just silence, just my own face staring back at me, hollow and empty. And then, I saw it. A flicker, a shadow, a face that wasn't mine, staring back from the screen. It was familiar, but wrong, twisted, distorted, with a smile that felt like a knife pressed against my skin, a smile that knew things I didn't want to know. "You know who I am," it whispered, the voice like ice, like something dead and buried clawing its way to the surface. I felt a shiver run through me, a cold, creeping dread that sank into my bones, because, deep down, I did know. I'd always known. It was a part of me, a shadow I'd ignored, a darkness I'd tried to forget. The parts of myself I'd buried, the regrets, the secrets, the things I'd hidden from everyone, even myself. This thing, this presence, it was me. A part of me that had broken free, that had taken on a life of its own. I stared at it, at the twisted reflection of my own face, my own fears staring back at me, mocking me. And I knew, in that moment, that there was no escaping it. This wasn't something I could fight. It was inside me, part of me. It had always been there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to take control. I tried to delete it, to wipe it away, to erase every trace of myself from the digital world, from my own life. But it was too late. Every time I hit delete, every time I tried to erase it, it would come back stronger, darker, more twisted, feeding off my fear, my desperation. The posts kept appearing, each one a reflection of my thoughts, my secrets, my regrets. It was like I was watching myself unravel, watching my own mind turn against me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't trust my own reflection, my own words. It was as if my own mind was a stranger, someone I couldn't control, someone I couldn't trust. I tried to reach out to someone, anyone, but the words wouldn't come. I didn't know how to explain it, didn't know how to make them understand. How do you tell someone that you're haunted by your own thoughts, that your own mind is your enemy? How do you explain that you're being watched, that you're being controlled by yourself? I was alone, truly, completely alone, and there was no one who could save me. Not from this. not from myself. As the days went on, I felt myself slipping away, bit by bit, piece by piece. I would look in the mirror and see someone else staring back, someone with my face, my eyes, but a smile that didn't belong to me, a smile that knew too much, that looked at me with a mix of pity and malice. I could feel it taking over, like a poison spreading through my veins, like a shadow crawling across my skin. It was no longer just in my posts, my words. It was in me, in every thought, every feeling. I was losing control, slipping into darkness, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I tried to fight it, tried to hold on to what was left of myself, but it was stronger, relentless, like a tide pulling me under. And every time I looked into my reflection, every time I saw that twisted smile, I knew I was losing. It was winning. It was taking over. I couldn't tell where I ended and it began. My thoughts, my memories, they were no longer mine. They belonged to it, to the shadow I'd ignored, to the darkness I'd tried to bury, and now it was taking its revenge. In the end, I gave up. I stopped fighting, stopped trying to hold on to the pieces of myself. I was tired, broken, hollow. I'd lost everything. My mind, my thoughts, my own sense of self. And as I sat there, staring into the blank screen, I felt a strange, terrible calm wash over me, a sense of acceptance, of surrender. The screen flickered, and for a moment, I saw myself, or what was left of me. But it wasn't my face. It was twisted, distorted, a mockery of who I'd been with that same cruel, knowing smile. It stared back at me, unblinking, unwavering, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. I looked into its eyes, into my own eyes, and I understood. This was who I was now. This was all that was left. The shadow, the darkness, the part of me I tried to ignore, to hide, it had won. It was me, and I was it. There was no going back. In the silence, I heard it speak. One final whisper that echoed in the emptiness, a voice that was mine but wasn't, a voice that would haunt me forever. I am, always, here. And I knew at that very moment, I was never lonely. I would always be with other people.